When the Philippines, the largest customer, temporarily halted rice imports, many were concerned but the reality turned out completely opposite, as bags of rice bearing the Vietnamese brand continued from distant markets like the Russian coast, on to closer ones like China and now Singapore. A market that, though small, is strict, where rice grades are evaluated not just by price but also by public opinion has recently been curious about Singapore being mentioned as a new bright spot on Vietnam's rice export. This market, though small in scale, is famous for its strict standards on quality and taste. The rice grains not only need to be delicious but also meet the sophistication of local consumers.
So what helps Vietnamese rice maintain its position in such a demanding market?
According to data from Singapore's Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, ACRA, in the first 9 months of 2025, Vietnam exported rice to Singapore with a total value of about $67.5 billion, accounting for 25.3% of the island nation. Although the value decreased by 11.5% compared to the same period last year, Vietnam still maintained its position only after India and Thailand, two powerhouses in the Asian rice industry. Analysts believe this decrease is not due to reduced demand, but mainly because Vietnam's average export rice price was lower than the previous year. In the export structure, white rice, the most common and competitive type, led with a turnover of $53.2 million, up 10.1% year-on-year, accounting for 31.0%. This is a notable achievement as Vietnam had to compete with over 20 countries, with India leading at 43.8% market share. Additionally, Vietnam's milled fragrant rice and glutinous rice also made strong impressions, accounting for 59.7% and 63.2% market. These figures make many wonder how Vietnamese rice could overcome the fierce competition. To win the trust of Singaporean consumers, rice market observers note that Vietnam's success in Singapore is not only due to price, but also quality and suitability to local tastes. Vietnamese rice grains, especially fragrant and glutinous varieties, are highly regarded for their chewiness and ability to retain quality after cooking. These are factors that Singaporean consumers, accustomed to refined dishes, particularly value. Moreover, Vietnam's rice production and preservation processes are meeting international standards for traceability and food safety. Trade experts assess that the investment in technology and processes has helped Vietnamese rice build trust in a demanding market like Singapore. An interesting question arises. Is this evidence that Vietnam is gradually positioning itself as a premium rice brand rather than competing solely on price? Furthermore, the prospects for bilateral cooperation between Vietnam and Singapore in the rice sector to open up many new opportunities. The cooperation agreement on rice supply, if signed, could help Vietnam not only consolidate its current market but also expand into higher-end segments. Interested parties raise the question: is this a turning point for Vietnamese rice to elevate in the Southeast Asian region? While Singapore is becoming a bright spot, Vietnam's largest traditional market, the Philippines, is causing many to worry. The Philippines' 60-day temporary rice import suspension has now passed the halfway mark and is creating significant impact. The Philippine Department of Agriculture stated that this move has helped domestic rice prices rise from 8 pesos to 14 pesos per kilogram, equivalent to about 24 cents. With the largest rice crop of the year entering harvest season, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is considering extending this order by 15 to 30 days. But will this be enough to solve the problem? The domestic rice prices in the Free Farmers Federation of the Philippines, FFF, does not. They argue that even if the import suspension is extended, cheap foreign rice will soon return and continue to pressure domestic rice prices. A notable proposal from the FFF is to restore the previous 35% import tax on imported rice. The question arises whether the Philippines can find a sustainable solution to balance between protecting domestic farmers and the population's need for cheap rice consumption. Agricultural market observers note that FFF's stance reflects deep concerns from the Philippine farming community, where millions of small households are suffering from sharply declining rice. According to recent reports, the import ban has been considered by the Philippine government to extend until the end of 2025, even into early 2026, to support domestic rice prices. However, public opinion questions the long-term effectiveness of this measure, because once the ban ends, imported rice flows from Vietnam and other countries could flood in again, causing local rice prices to plummet. Policy watchers suggest that FFF's proposal to increase the export tax to 35% could be a necessary step to create a protective barrier, helping local farmers compete more fairly without completely sacrificing consumer interests. Agricultural economics experts analyze restoring higher tax levels could generate revenue for farmer support funds, such as the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, RCEF, to invest in crop technology and infrastructure. This raises expectations of increasing product, helping the Philippines move closer to its rice self-sufficiency goal.
However, some analysts worry that
higher taxes could cause retail rice prices to soar, affecting tens of millions of poor households who spend most of their income on basic food.
the bigger question raised is how the Philippines can learn from models like ARI.
Projecting self-sufficiency by 2050. By combining tax increases with direct consumer subsidy programs. Those knowledgeable about trade policy note that amendments to the Rice Tarification Law (RTL) are currently the focus with proposals to restore the National Food Authority (NFA). This could include building strategic reserves and supporting farm gate prices for farmers, while maintaining price ceilings for imported rice to protect consumers. Public opinion in the Philippines is divided. One side supports protecting farmers to ensure long-term foods, the other emphasizes the need for cheap rice to reduce poverty.
International observers question whether the Philippines can achieve balance
by negotiating with an ASEAN to adjust trade obligations, or needs a more comprehensive strategy combining technological innovation and crop diversification. In the context of climate change and population growth, sustainable solutions seem to require close coordination between farmers and consumers to avoid repeating the cycle of price instability. Before the import ban took effect, the Philippines imported nearly 3.1 million tons of rice in 2020, with Vietnam accounting for up to 51.5%. Nevertheless, the country's rice import demand remains very high, especially as recent forecasts show declining domestic rice production. Philippine consumers still show particular preference for Vietnamese due to its stable quality and competitive price. Some Philippine officials even acknowledge that, economically speaking, rice imports remain a more reasonable choice. So will Vietnamese rice continue to maintain its position in this market when the import ban ends? Not only the Philippines, but another major market is Indonesia. There are also other notable moves. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto recently claimed that it has become self-sufficient in rice and even exports to other countries. However, reality shows that rice prices in Indonesia surged to 96 cents per kilogram in August due to the impact of El Niño-induced drought. Supermarkets in Jakarta even faced rice shortages, despite national reserves reaching nearly 4 million tons. Market observers wonder whether Indonesia has truly achieved its ambition to become the world's rice bowl as declared. In this context, the global rice market is witnessing abundant supply, particularly from India and China, causing export rice prices to compare to the same period last. Thailand, the world's second largest rice exporter, is also facing difficulties, with export turnover decreasing by 30% in the first 8 months of 2025. India, while leading the market, has had to implement export control measures to protect domestic rice prices. These developments lead many to question whether Vietnamese can seize opportunities to expand market share amid increasingly fierce. According to the Vietnam Food Association, as of mid-September, Vietnam 6.6 million tons of rice, achieving nearly 3.4 billion. Although value decreased by 17% compared to last year due to falling world volume, still increased slightly by 1 point. Experts forecast that rice demand in African markets, which are traditional areas for Vietnam, remains high. This is a positive signal, especially as the Philippines may soon resume imports. The biggest question now is whether Vietnam can effectively leverage opportunities from both traditional markets and new destinations like Singapore to achieve this year's rice export targets. Despite facing many challenges, from the Philippines' import ban to intense competition from major rivals, Vietnamese rice still shows strong appeal. Success in Singapore, a small but demanding market, demonstrates the increasingly affirmed quality and reputation of Vietnam. Market observers can't help but hope that, with investments in quality and systematic trade strategies, Vietnam won't just stop at exporting rice, but will build an internationally recognized rice brand. Is this the time for Vietnamese rice to reach further? Not only in Singapore but also on the global food map?
Like the journey? Subscribe and join the next expedition.